Hi, Derek.
Team, hi to the team from what's the best way to address your rather than saying Universal Robina, or I should always use the full name
Now just say URC. URC is fine.
RC. Okay, right. Thank you. Right. Thank you so much. Super comprehensive homework that you folks have put together. There's a lot of material, and I think just looking at what you've said in the beginning, in terms of the background, what information, why innovation is important to the organization and such. All that's really comprehensive. And so I think we'll sort of lightly touch on that and actually go spend a little bit more time on the probable problem statements, because there are 8 of them. So I think we're going to need a little bit more time to discuss that. So my colleague here is going to scroll through the slides for the responses as well. So just keep going. Okay, so we'll start with we'll start with the organization and stakeholders. Actually, before we start, is there any comments from the URC group?
Yeah, and maybe Lisa and Krish can also chime in here. But we've been trying to look at innovation as more than just the traditional product innovation. I think that's one of the impetuses also for why we're reaching out to join this workshop. Because we understand that there are many types of innovation and not all of them are product centric. URC is a manufacturer, so that's been our focus area for the last 50 years. But we see that there's now innovations in business models, in processes, in networks, in route to market, etc. So there's a lot that we also want to address outside of our core product innovation lens.
Yeah. Okay, thanks for the comment. I do notice that the problem statements that you've shared, a number of them are actually around product innovation. And I just later on, I want to dig into that a little bit, because and I also note that innovation is headed by R&D. And so, how does that actually work for you? And is that the reason why you've actually focused on product innovation? And more importantly, I hope by the end of today, and please feel free to ask me lots of questions, we can actually ascertain what are the things that you can look into that are a little bit more suited for an open innovation challenge type of activity. Because it is not to say that product development cannot be a challenge statement on its own for this, because we've had some examples, not a lot, of companies looking into particular types of technology to integrate into the new products. But I think in your situation, you're sort of looking at sort of consumer products, and so perhaps it's the process of getting to those products that we could actually look into technology innovation.
Yep. So maybe just to add, I think product innovation is critical because we are a food and manufacturing business. But I think we also, as mentioned by Nikki, cognizant of the fact that innovation actually goes beyond product. And so there are commercially viable ideas that can come out from a channel innovation or a process innovation or even a business model innovation. So I think we're open, except that I think Krish, who's a chief R&D officer, is keen to really use open innovation process to even further enhance their capabilities in this space. But we are open to more than just product innovation.
I see. Okay. Absolutely. Thank you. By the way, before we continue, I just want to say that I grew up on Jack and Jill, so thank you very much. I'm really glad that we're doing this room here. You brought out a really interesting point about about a chief R&D officer. So just to share with you, one of our biggest clients had been Unilever, and we've been working with Unilever, connecting them different brands to a lot of different types of marketing and advertising technologies. And also, so loyalty and a lot of different types of topics that we tackled with different brands as well as the business functions at Unilever over the years. So we honestly stopped working with them this year because what they did was they actually shifted their focus to from these types of digital solutions to putting that open innovation capabilities under R&D. And part of the reason why we stopped working with them this year is because Singapore doesn't have the R&D center. It's in India. So they moved that capability to India. But it's also but what I'm also saying with that story is that R&D actually also I believe has a lot of rich possibilities as well. Okay, maybe we'll just move on to the next slide.
So, yeah, I think actually there is an explanation in one of the succeeding slides on how innovation is actually managed, because it's not only product, right? So when it comes to it, I'll put in some color to it. Yeah, keep going.
Okay. This particular slide, and I think that's also reflected in your problem statement inputs as well, that lots of people are involved in lots of things. In your experience so far, has anyone been more involved? Because I mean, you're very right. All innovation, basically, for most innovation, it actually requires support from a lot of different departments and functions across the organization, and that's how these innovations can succeed. But I'm just curious whether there is any particular function or department that's been more active. They've got more advocates for innovation. They're more enthusiastic about innovation. Is there anyone that has stand out for you?
Well, so typically, and marketing have been doing a lot of product development led innovation. So you will naturally find a lot more energy on that space there. Having said that, we've also got office, which is leading our process innovation, our business process innovation. That's a major one for us. Lisa heads that. Then you've got a range of digital future role managed, but they're all program managed. We've got a bunch of projects out there, close to probably 15, 20 major ones. And then the program management of that is organized through our DTO team, which is led by our Chief Strategy Officer and our Chief Information Technology Officer. So, and as you would have figured it out by now, our CEO is right at the heart of all this. So he sort of pushes on the multiple levers. So think of a model of innovation like this. When we think of an innovation, we say which is a function that is appropriate for program management of that. So the function owns the program management part, and the innovation itself tends to be decentralized with the right people in it. So I think that's the way you can probably think of how URC treats innovations. It is so how much is the level of involvement? Going back to your question, it's varying degrees, but you can easily find people in R&D who are very savvy about going beyond the horizons. For example, what would happen in the next 5 years if a watch comes out, if Apple comes out with a watch that gives you your sugar content in your blood just because you're wearing the watch. It's quite possible, right? So, and imagine your GI response being visible, and when you take the snacks, now is that a positive or a negative? We don't know, right? So, and then the question is, how do you innovate in that context? So you will find. So if I'm just throwing an example out there. So you will find people in R&D generally willing to stretch beyond because we have budgets to experiment. Quite frankly, we've got budgets to we have the luxury of failing, right? That's why we call it trials. But that's not the full story. So the full story is depending on the type of innovation, if it's a channel innovation, if it's a digital innovation, different people are there. You've got multiple advocates. Actually, that's also why you've got a very highly cross-functional team from URC here. It's a pretty open discussion. And if we can co-discover some opportunities, it is very likely and there's a buy-in, it is very likely we'll be able to galvanize resources. Make sense? I don't know. Was I choppy?
Apologies, I was on mute. Who usually initiates these ideas? Is it do you have a ground out approach to this, or it's don't want to make it sound terrible, but a more top-down approach?
Well, it can come from anywhere. We are very open to it. We do. So let me give you an example of product innovations. So we have product innovations that come out from what we call as a discovery process. We do deliberate consumer mapping studies. We call it a GUM internally, and that actually understands the meaning. And that was a study done, I think, on 20,000 people in Philippines. So that's a lot. So there's a rich data that we use to trigger responses. We use suppliers to make us provocations. We of course also have our senior leaders who travel a lot, and we get ideas from there. We have salespeople who could potentially give us some ideas. So I don't think we are. It's not one way or the other. So the simple answer to the question. But what we do is, once there is an idea, there is an owner that will own the idea based on where it is best nurtured. So if it's a product idea, typically we have a marketing-led squad, as we call that today. We call them a project owner, and the project owner has a squad of people, a cross-functional team, and they sort of work through it. So they iterate it, they pivot it, they do whatever they need to do with it.
Okay.
Yeah. So maybe I'd just like to add as well. So outside of product innovation, oftentimes innovation comes into play when there is a problem to solve. And whether it's on efficiencies, whether it's on, quality or whatever, right? And so when there's a problem to solve, each function, regardless of what the problem is, they get together and then they go through a similar maybe design thinking exercise, but maybe not as complex as that we have in product innovation. And then that's where the creativity, that's where the ideas come out, and from there then they make recommendations to proceed, either commercializing the idea or putting forth that idea for budget purposes, etc. So it's to Krishna's point, I guess, because innovation is something that doesn't reside in a specific function, but it is an accountability of each of the functional heads or business unit heads to propagate it and make sure that we continue to sustain our business. Then it's really more dispersed, not than centralized.
Thanks, Lisa. And I think we'll come back on that, because I think there's a question on activities like training and things like that, and culture also. I think it's one of the important thing. Maybe we'll just move on to the next slide as well. Krish, maybe back to you as well in terms of that question about I think I had a question on budget approvals. Like, does a budget approval come from you, or like how does the, if you want to do a pilot, where does the budget come from?
Okay, so it depends on the pilot, right? So if it, so imagine it is a pilot that is, say, we decide that it has to be owned by what we call as a global innovations team, the R&D team and whatever. So then a bulk of the budget would probably come from my place. But if it's a business process innovation, I think Lisa will approve the money with Arvind. So it depends. So yeah, so it depends on the problem to solve. But what I can tell you is from a R&D point of view, we normally budget for work, and we budget for work in advance, and there is always a fuzzy work which is not necessarily 100% specified, but we know the broad space. We budget for some work, and we have approval rights obviously on that. Make sense? I don't know.
Yeah, look, most organizations that we speak to would say, and it's a case-by-case basis and things like that. I think that's unless you have really established a very clear program. Like Unilever used to have the Unilever Foundry program, for example. So a fixed set of rules, everybody in the world knows exactly what it is. The business unit will put in, if you have a problem to solve, you put in $50,000 US for the pilot. This is the process. These are the steps. And someone like Padang will guide you through those steps. So and it's not just that, but also
it's not like we are not like the Unilever Foundry.
Yeah, exactly.
We have not yet evolved ourselves to that space. Not yet.
Yeah,
far from it.
No, look, it is a journey. Everybody really get there. It took them a while to get there. And honestly, it's also not perfect because it's one size fits all. And sometimes people just want it faster, and sometimes people want it slower. Some projects require much more budgets than 50,000 US. Some actually don't need 50,000 US. And so that one size fits all process also has its own challenges. So maybe I'll move on to the next section as well. Strategic approach and objectives. I think all this is quite clear to us as well. Maybe we'll just move on to the next slide. We talked about product innovation as well. But one thing that I just want to sort of pick up this as well. I don't know who wrote this. Some of the key, not sure privatization, but some of the key things that we can focus on in terms of the plastic reduction, RTD, dairy, meals category, and health and wellness. Now, we do have quite a few health and wellness related, and I think meals category also some of the problem statements there. Can I just quickly understand what's RTD dairy and also perhaps elaborate a little bit more about plastic reduction?
Yeah, maybe I can tackle that. So RTD dairy is the ready-to-drink dairy space. It's one of the categories that we have not been able to crack per se. I mean, we're there in a small way with chocolate milk, but we don't really have anything big in terms of the product, in terms of that category. So that's something that we do want to understand. On plastic reduction, I guess this is also part of those, this builds on some of the comments earlier on where the problem statements will come from. Strategically, while we are a food manufacturing company, we also have some sustainability ambitions. We have our own sustainability commitments, including plastic neutrality by 2030, net zero by 2050. So there are also some innovation streams that are ongoing, not within this group, but as part of a company. I think there's also innovation opportunities there that can help with plastic circularity and extended producer responsibility. So I think that's also why that was plugged in here. If you'll notice, the rest of the responses are primarily category specific, product specific, as mentioned. There were a few on the business model side, but yeah, I mean, as you said, the innovations could come from anywhere.
Yeah. Okay. Do you feel that sort of from a technology innovation point of view, any of these are a bit more advanced than others?
Could you repeat could you provide some nuance on that? More advanced in terms of technology requirements,
Yeah.
or what?
More in terms of like, have you explored using technologies to solve these problems or develop new opportunities in some of these situations? Do you feel that any one of these were a little bit more advanced than the others?
I'll leave that to Krish to answer. I know that on the plastic reduction side, we are looking at advanced technologies as well through some of our other sustainability work streams. But on the product development side, Krish, I'll turn over to you.
Yeah, so we are looking at fairly high-end technology solutions in the areas of plastic, and that includes stuff like specialized additives that could help us work on our existing packing machines while going monomaterial, for example, right? So from multi-layer to monomaterial, and that could be a packaging problem, or there could be additives that will help us to disintegrate plastics without any soil, any other waste. So that's the other kind of technology. Then when it comes to health and wellness, we've been looking at some. We've been trying to look for specific ingredient technologies where we get some distinctive claims, and the idea of distinctive is we want to make sure that the product claim and the proposition are both distinctive, and that's a sweet spot that will work for us. And to give you an example for you. There is a material called Reducose, Reducose. Now the company came to us along with others, but Nestle picked it up, and Nestle has been investing a lot of money going ahead. So they moved faster. So probably we will not chase that anymore, because it's not good enough to have a technology. You also want to make sure you have a unique proposition and a proposition that's relevant to the consumer. So I think, but there is a technology element in terms of, say, in this example, managing blood sugar glucose levels, right? So I think that's one. So there could be some very high-end technologies. In the case of, we have been working with suppliers, for example, to understand specific combinations of stabilizers and emulsifiers that improve the notion of a mouthfeel of a beverage, because mouthfeel is a big deal for some of our beverage categories, and it's a super big deal actually. So these are very targeted solutions that we go after. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So you feel that do you feel that the open innovation approach is probably not as useful for you in some of these other categories like plastic reduction, for example, because you're looking at some material science and more sophisticated scientific approaches?
It depends on what the open innovation, what is the window looking out looks like, right?
Yeah. So
if I were to, meaning when I was in my previous company, we would have open innovation where we would look at ingredient technology. So it is quite possible. Meaning it depends on who are the other parties we can potentially shake hands with.
Okay.
So it depends. So the answer is, I don't know. It depends on who are the other players with whom who are potentially willing to tango, and then it's a two-way street.
Cool. Great. So you're open. Okay. Maybe we'll just move on to the next slide as well. So this is, I think this is all really clear, but back to Lisa. Do you one of the biggest challenges that we have with open innovation is always that we need to take up people's time, to do the work, because sometimes people see this as the extra work that they didn't ask for. and sometimes that you know, those human factors actually come in. Was there you know, in terms of the culture itself, do you feel confident that you know, you have a sufficient pool of people who are undergone the sort of innovation workshops, design thinking workshops, who are enthusiastic enough to actually you know, volunteer the time or just put in the extra effort to push through some of these innovation activities?
Okay, so to be very transparent, and I think the team is here maybe to add if you guys can also chime in. So resource constraint is a potential challenge because we do have a lot of work at hand, whether it's on innovation or running the business, right? So I think that's a reality that we are currently facing ourselves. But having said that, I think if the challenge posed in this open innovation activity is something that is already in our pipeline or is already scoped in as a to-do list or a priority or a big rock for us, it's I think, and I think I don't know Jason, Krish, I don't want to speak for you, but I think channeling the resources could be a feasible thing for so long as it's aligned to, you know, what business directions or priorities we have.
Yeah, if it's something that I would say working with you know, probably a couple of hundreds of corporates so far, working looking at what's in your pipeline and you know, what various stakeholders are willing to support already in your work plan is a very smart way to do it. The slight challenge here is sometimes that people already have a more fixed idea of what they are trying to get to, and so you know, there's always that little bit of challenge in that process. So they're a little bit less open, and they feel like, oh, we've really looked at this, we've really looked at that. So at the end of the day, they feel like it hasn't given them additional viewpoints just because they've been working on it for the last 6 months. So that is one potential thing, but not insurmountable. Absolutely, something that we can definitely address. Okay, sort of move on. So just want to quickly also just look at perhaps open to everybody, not just Chris and Lisa, whether, you know, what were the things that you know, in working with startups or technology providers over the years, what were the things that really struck you as being really positive in terms of that sort of experience? Did it help you do things faster, get to results faster, lower costs, increase revenues? What are some of the key things here?
Jess, you want to go for it?
Yeah, sorry. Did I get it correctly? What are the positives of doing innovation collaborations, Derek? Did I get that?
With startups?
Yeah,
With startups.
and on the flip side, the next slide is really on the challenges, right? So, you know, for every engagement, there's always the positives and negatives. Just very quickly, what are the major things in terms of positives and negatives?
Yeah, I think on the positives, it I wouldn't really say quicker or faster, but I think more efficiently because we take advantage of the expertise, right? So personally, I don't know. I don't know if it counts as open innovation, Krish, but we had opportunities to develop products with external partners in some sort of way, like in certain portions of the innovation process, we brought in expertise from outside, right? So in terms of like product product conceptualization or even on the manufacturing end. It allows us to reach or to take advantage of the capabilities of others. If there are gaps in the internal capabilities, may it be on the sourcing side or in the manufacturing side. So to that degree, it gives us speed to market, at least for the innovation work that we've done. So it also allows us to manage our risks, because honestly we can also invest and bring in those things, right? Expertise, capabilities. But in some ways, we also want to manage the investments and the risks that we have, and it allows us to test and learn quicker. So for me, those are the positives that I view on this one.
Okay, thanks, Jason. And I think later we'll pick up a couple of your points, because those positive experiences can actually be used as a lens to evaluate the appropriateness of a challenge that we might want to actually put up there, because all things being equal, you might actually want to build on some of the successful models that you've actually experienced. So maybe we'll just move on to the next slide. I'm just conscious of time as well. I think the main challenges, I think that all this is quite clear when I read this. Anything that anybody want to add to this before we move on? Okay, I think let's move on. Okay, live information innovation projects. So you got your global innovation centers and your agile and digital transformation and office projects. Any one of these are actively seeking startups to work with?
I think we haven't brought that idea to them, so I'm not sure if there is interest to actually do that. And because it is relatively new for our company, I think we might even need to do a briefing of what's the value of doing open innovation to begin with. So at least from what I've seen, those that have been set forth as priorities for the Agile squads, it's pretty much still contained within URC, and maybe working with suppliers, working with vendors, but not. And I think Nikki here does work with the strategy team in business development, and they do look out for potential opportunities to grow the business through startups. So I think we're investing on that. But Nikki, I don't know how you actually take the next steps on that engagement with the startups. But internally for the Agile squad, I don't think we've sort of considered them for innovation exercises.
Yeah, so maybe I can take that. So Derek, we also have a corporate, a CVC of our own called URC Equity Ventures. It's domiciled in Singapore. We actually also look at making investments into companies that have some strategic synergies with us. And at the same time, also, of course, we'll provide some financial returns. We're running that. We're running that as a separate venture. So the engagement with startups, meaning at seed, pre-seed, we don't really do that. We normally wait until Series A or higher before we make any direct investments. However, we are also trying to partner with EDB, A-Star, and other accelerators as part of gov.sg, who are trying to connect us with some of these startups. But yeah, to Lisa's point, integration of those specific startups with our problems that we're trying to tackle internally, maybe not so much.
Okay, all right. So yeah, thanks. And I actually, perhaps before we switch to this board, which we'll spend about 45 minutes on, one thing that I would, maybe just a good point where we just think, what is an open innovation challenge good for, right? It is for challenge statements that are one, aspirational enough, and two, and yet solvable by a single startup. So basically, when you could have a big aspiration to build something really big, but we kind of need to sort of scale it down to a point where what can a startup do for you, and the first step is how can they prove that point, right? What can they pilot to prove that point such that they can actually solve this problem once it's implemented. It might not cover the entire scale, the entire platform, if you will, or the entire product, or meet your entire ambition, but it is something that is of scale. And it's typically, as I think you probably already know, it's typically not something that you can buy off the shelf, right? So it's like if you want a particular a product feature, or technology application, for example, sometimes we can immediately tell you that actually what you want is so clear that perhaps it doesn't even need to go in the innovation challenge. It could either be a direct sourcing, so it's a bit more procurement. Chances are it's not, but sometimes it is the case. Or sometimes it's just a very quick short list of companies that can actually do this for you without going into a whole process of this. So usually for innovation challenge, there's some creativity that's demanded of the startups, right? Because it's not off the shelf. It doesn't, whatever they have now cannot 100% fulfill your needs. So the question is, how can we guide them such that whatever they provide you is closer to what you would like, and more importantly, something that you can pilot and then work from there. I hope that was clear. So you'd see that we switched to this board. Basically, what I've done is I've taken your inputs from the questionnaire and put them into here. This page is the health and wellness page. There's another page, I think, there's another page, there's more new products page. It's sort of an others category here, but we won't get to it. So let's just look into this one first. And under this, it seems to me there are 4 conversations we had, and I understand that there are different stakeholders involved in these sort of conversations. So maybe let's just take one at a time and maybe spend about 5 or so minutes on each one of these before we move on. So stream number 1, we're talking about building a health and wellness platform within URC. And so what I would like to sort of get you to articulate, can I understand who's the owner for this particular problem?
Yeah, I think I was the one who wrote this one. So yeah, so just coming from a product innovation lens, right? So well, I think everyone knows that URC is mainly known for Jack and Jill and the rest of enjoyment products. But I think one of the identified thrusts moving forward is to really establish our presence as well on the health and wellness space. I think there have been attempts in the past, so we've had several tries on this one, but I think we have yet to land on a credible health and wellness portfolio for us. So I think that's where this quote unquote problem is coming from.
Okay, thanks. So can you explain to me what your expectation in terms of like a platform, because that word means different things to different people. And it sounds to me that what we're trying to describe here is more of opportunity rather than a problem to be solved, Am I right in the interpretation?
Yeah, it's an opportunity for growth, right? So since we're already strong in like the snacking and the enjoyment space, or delivering on those motivations, I think the health and wellness snacking one is an opportunity for growth. But at the same time, it might pose a problem for us if we're concentrated on the other motivations, right? So it talks about business sustainability as well, moving forward, right? Yeah, and in the sense, personally, when I think of platform, I think of something like how Jack and Jill is a platform for snacking, right? So it's a credible platform for us when we talk about snacking fun and enjoyment. I mean, everyone knows what Jack and Jill is, but within the company, I think there's also space to do this health and wellness platform, which is distinct from the offerings that we have in Jack and Jill that might talk somewhat of a benefit of health, but not really full-fledged. So it's like more or less of rather than really communicating health and wellness benefits.
That's it. Pardon me, but it sounded a bit more like the brand positioning of Jack and Jill as more healthy snacking rather than like usually in a tech world we say a platform. It could mean a website that you sort of log in and it says like measuring your health or helping you, an app that helps you track how much you're eating, what you're eating, and
yeah. Not that kind of platform. When I talk of platform like a house of health and wellness offerings, that's distinct from the current offerings that we have. Right?
Okay. So it's still a very sort of branding and product development. So
Yes.
how do you think in that how do you think a startup any thoughts in how do you think a startup could actually be helpful in any part of the way?
I've not really gotten into the point of how startup, but maybe they have some, like for example, in terms of product development, they have some technologies on compositions that deliver on the satisfaction or enjoyment, but still possess those health and wellness, like I don't know, no sodium, good tasting snack, right? Or bases that are really good for you but still taste well. So I think those are the areas where I could see, or maybe even ways of producing snacks that are not bad for you. For example, if it's, I mean, most of our snacks are fried, for example. So I don't know if we can deliver that fried goodness without being fried. I don't know. Some I'm just throwing out some thoughts that I have.
Yeah. So what we're trying to get to is just to understand, if you put out a challenge statement, does this make sense for someone else to help you solve this, right? And so just sort of understanding what we're trying to get to is actually really quite important. Whether you want it's actually a product development or is it a brand? And whether it's a function that helps you articulate the brand value to your customers. Like for example, we've done with Unilever, for example, in the early days, the QR codes or sort of AR, VR, sort of AR scanning of the packaging, things like that brings out more information for you, and things like that. Or there was another case of a soap brand, for example, where we had a wearable that actually reinforced the habit of washing hands. So that's what I'm saying, that there are different ways of technology that can help you with that, whether it is the development of the product or the enjoyment of the product, if you will.
Yep. Yeah. Agree.
Yeah.
Build on that, no?
What's your preference? Sorry, Krish.
Yeah, go ahead. So let Jace answer that question first. Then I'll give you my view. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'll just back to Mickey. Like,
Jace?
what is your preference in terms of which end? Is it, technologies that help you develop the products or the engineering?
Okay, that's very good.
Yeah.
I think it's a combination. I mean, part of the building of platform would be the offering and how we market it, right? So I think it could be both. But we have to start with developing it. Then I guess the execution of it would have all of those. So yeah, to your point, we could have the the operational bit of, like, for example, a good example of it would be the one that you said, or the scanning of the packaging and showing the health and wellness benefits, right? And all of those things.
Yeah.
So I think it's personally, I think it's a combination of both, and openness to both the development side and and quote unquote branding marketing side, technologies as well. Sorry, Krish, that's my, I don't know if you want to.
Yeah. So, if I were to reframe no, so what you're looking for is establishing a proposition platform, right, Jace? That's at the heart of it.
Yes.
Meaning, when we say what do you mean by the word platform? It's a proposition. What is the proposition? And that's where the distinctiveness of the proposition is the key ask. And if we look at our history, that's where we have struggled to get a distinctive and attractive proposition that works. I think that's been one element of, that's been the marketing challenge, correct? So
yes,
am I right? Yeah. So the marketing challenge has been I think so there is to back to your original question, Derek, on how else could a startup work for us now. I'll probably throw a little more radical idea here. So for the rest of my URC team, apologies, but in advance. But I that's the license I take. So Jace is normally fine with these things. So here is what you could do. You could say, actually, guess what? If you have a distinctive proposition and potentially a product, or not a product, meaning whatever. I think if you have a distinctive proposition, because that's at the heart of this problem, right? The marketing problem. If you have a distinctive proposition, guess what? We could license the brand for you, and we will help you scale up. But and we could, and the scale up support could involve, sales and marketing. It could involve, the actual, distribution, and potentially then leading to, complete absorption of some sort. So that's one extreme idea. So of course the startup guys should be willing to buy that notion. They may not want to, but that's one extreme idea.
Yeah.
But that's something that companies like Pepsi have done well, actually, if you look at their history over the last 10, 15 years.
Again, apologies to just keep using Unilever examples because I'm very familiar with them. I mean, Ben & Jerry's is one thing, right? Ben & Jerry's remains a very independent company, but they basically leverage all the Unilever resources to scale globally. And another really interesting example is Dollar Shave Club, which is, it's razors, is not product innovation, but it's a business model innovation. And so, Unilever ended up spending $1 billion buying it. So it's not necessarily that, but, perhaps you just can think about how do you express your new value proposition, right? Which is health and wellness.
Yeah, because if you were to think of the problem only in the previous box lens, it could well be a consultancy problem, right? You could employ a consultant who will help you. But I think this one gives a more specific this one for So this is where a startup could work for us. I don't know what you guys think. If If nobody likes this idea, please kill it right now, guys. No worries.
Oh, I think it's too early to kill anything. You know, we can continue to have a conversation. You have 2 weeks to think about this before we come back again. So in the interest of time, we still have like the seven more columns to go. But the first one always takes more time, just because, you know, it's the first one that we used to talk about. Shall we, if you don't mind, just maybe let's just talk about the problems or opportunities rather than concern ourselves with the other inputs here. Let's go to stream 2. And so this one, sorry, we're lagging. Right. So stream 2, it's a breakfast offering for moms, and I think the stream 3, it's kind of the same as well. And I was just wondering why it's actually 2. Because it came from 2 different departments actually sort of looking at the same problem? Can I just understand?
It's 2 different people. Yeah, so I wrote the stream 2, and I think how can the startup help? I think it is very similar to my box 2 that I was talking about, right? So can we get is there a guy whose proposition and product we like, and guess what, we license it out and move on in life. So that's where I was heading to with stream 2 when I was writing that. But it could well be option 1 that Jace was telling. So that's also work fine. So, but it needs to come with a like I said, a distinctive ingredient technology to support the proposition very clearly. So I guess that's the key call out there. Stream 3, who wrote that, guys? I think it is, who wrote this? Is it Jace?
It's me, Chris.
Yeah,
actually it's similar to stream 2, but it's focusing on more on the convenience, on how to solve the convenience, because based from the previous interviews that we had from mothers, they'd rather get up early in the morning to prepare food, breakfast for their family, considering that breakfast is the most important meal of the day. Yet they don't realize that they're sacrificing a lot of time just to prepare food for their kids. So it's somehow similar to stream 2, but it's more focusing on the convenience and the maybe the reduction.
The primary benefit here is, we can just skip this. Because I don't know, time is not a big. My suggestion is you let's skip this.
But I also want to make a note there that actually sometimes putting a very specific context like breakfast, for example, is actually quite an interesting thing, because it becomes an interesting exercise for you to sort of map out the consumer journey, and also what's the experience. And then it's easier for for us to think how technology can help enhance or enable that particular experience, rather than if it's too broad, like health and wellness, and sometimes that actually becomes harder for us to narrow down. So breakfast is something at this stage I would say it's still something that is quite doable. And I encourage you to.
So there are a few benefits, there are a few benefits you can go after. So if you look at the bucket that Jet just explained, he went after time for breakfast, time to make the breakfast. But you have more. For example, it could be, I want to give my kid a breakfast because I want him to sustain his energy till the afternoon. So long-lasting energy could be. So that's why I sort of generalized it under stream 2. Meaning there could be multiple expressions of that proposition. And of course, each of those different propositions will have different solutions. So probably stream 3 is a subset of stream 2. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
But breakfast as a space, we are clearly interested in that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think lots of possibilities there. Shall we move on to the stream number 4, copy? So this one sounds to me, at least as a layperson reading this, as a very focused on just a product innovation. Can the lead for this maybe sort of try to explain the possibilities there in terms of where do you think technology or just a new way of doing things could help?
Sorry, who wrote this, guys?
I did, Gladys here.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. Actually, we've been trying to crack the solution to like at least grab shares from Copico. So not just on the product innovation, but also on technologies like how do we make it better in terms of texture or mouthfeel, which Sir Krishna mentioned a while ago. So there are things that not just on the taste per se, but more on how can we create that product that can really be in the market longer than what we usually do. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So you're looking for more at the sciences of it, the science of it, the science to improve the product.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about the
Probably this is not
consumption?
Sorry, go, what is the question again?
What about the
the
delivery of it or the consumption of it?
consumption? So Gladys, this is powder bev, right?
Yes.
So which is so
Yeah,
this
but
is a mix. Yeah, it's a mix in which you add hot water and tal.
But I think yeah, with the open innovation idea, it's somehow it's not that applicable.
Okay.
Yeah, unless there is an open innovation platform with a research agency that can give us some targeted solutions. That could be mouthfeel, that could be sweetness, that could be dairy components, meaning dairy perception, etc.
Yeah.
But that, I think that's an open innovation with universities, not necessarily with startups, probably.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Maybe let's move on to the next page, which is sort of the by the way, folks, we're using the Zoom whiteboard function, which we tested and tested and tested. It was all okay yesterday, and it's not okay today. So the team here has been scrambling to get around that. It goes to show that, you know, never mind if they spend $1 billion on R&D every year, there's still issues with the actual thing that we are seeing and using. Are we ready with the next page? Loading up. Yes. Okay. Yes, we finally got there. Okay, let's spend maybe the next 10 or so minutes on this before we do a quick conclusion, and then we have to go back to the main room. So let's look at stream number 1. This is enhanced route to market capabilities. Who was responsible for this particular statement?
Sorry, I guess this is me again. So not on the, this is not particularly on the product innovation side, but more on how we do our distribution portion of our business, right? Currently, we have good strength on the normal channels, but I think there are more and more specialized channels that are coming around, like I don't know, channels that specialize on health, channels that specialize on like other things outside of the mainstream ones, like the big supermarkets, big chains, big convenience stores, right? And I think in those channels we don't have quite a good grasp on how to do it yet. And I think that would unlock more opportunities for us, not only in terms of the current portfolio that we have, but also in the development of other specialized offerings that we can go after. Like, I don't know, like I already mentioned health and wellness. So there are health and wellness stores there. There could also be premium stores. I think most of our products are on the mass price, mainstream price. And I think there are like very specialized premium stores out there that can unlock opportunities as well. So yeah.
Okay.
So I know there are like startups that specialize on B2C, like expanding reach. Most of them are online, I guess. But I'm not sure if there are startups that do like actual physical stores yet, right? But anyway, that's where this one was coming from.
Yeah. I mean, there are, like, for example, in Indonesia in the last 2 years, 2 to 3 years, suddenly there's this rise of very successful coffee chains, right? And then basically, and then they've got slightly different proposition from Starbucks, and they're absolutely eating Starbucks lunch. So I mean, there are some bricks and mortar ones, but I think as you sort of talked about before earlier, it sounds like, so you're talking about sort of e-commerce platforms, last mile delivery, that sort of solutions.
Yeah, plus the other specialized physical stores. So I mean, there are really specialized stores that we have not yet tapped with our sales teams. So
Can you give me an example of a specialized store?
Like, I'm not sure if you have healthy options there. I'm guessing it's a well-known brand, right? And a well-known retail store that specializes on healthy offerings, for example.
Okay.
And there are quite a few, for example, specialty beverage shops, like, I don't know, alcoholic beverages that that really cater to special or very particular offerings as well.
Okay.
So those types of stores.
How back to the question that we've posed before, how can a startup help with this, or is this something that your trade marketing team is already working on?
It might be that they're exploring opportunity or exploring ways to do it. I'm not I'm not sure if there are route to market or distribution startups. I know there are a lot in e-commerce. Like, we have the groceries, we have the ones that cater to like small mom and pop stores. I don't know if they cater to specialized stores, and I don't know if there are like startups that cater to physical distributorship. But might be something worth exploring as well.
Okay, I would suggest that, if it's brick and mortar, that I mean, chances are, even if there are a couple of startups, it's only a couple of startups, so it's probably not suitable for an open innovation challenge. But perhaps if there's a challenge statement around it, maybe we won't exclude it automatically, but that's probably not going to be the focus of it. And there could be other ones, like smart fridges, smart vending machines. I mean, there's a whole new generation that's coming out, and the prices are dropping. And then there are more, at least in Singapore, there are more and more companies looking at what vending machines can actually put out. And so there's quite a lot of innovation happening in that area at the moment. So okay, understood. In the interest of time, can we move on to stream number 2?
Yeah, so I wrote that. So imagine a world, and I gave an example of watches, but that could come up in the future. So today we have got enough time, meaning you got the Google Eyewear was there at one point of time, but you've now got better than that, actually. I think even China, there is some, what is the Chinese company that makes that? So anyway, so Yeah. So anyway, so there are a lot of these wearable devices that are able to track or get a lot of physical and emotional mapping that you can actually get out of data now. And there is stuff that's available, and there is stuff that's coming up in the near future.
Yeah.
Now, we think we will. We think leveraging them to design. To understand a response to a stimulus, I think is a great way to design products and services for the future. So I've quoted here a very specific example for product, but effectively it's the same solution if one wants to. So imagine you're looking at a poster. Depending on what you see, the colors you see, you have a response, you have a liking, you have an emotional response, and some things work and some things don't work. So you could use this to design your posters. You could use it to so I think there could be a platform work that could actually emerge in the way you build a combination of hardware and software. And this is something that's useful for us, obviously, as a tool of trade and as to serve our back-end processes. Imagine, I would not be surprised if Lisa wants to give it as a tool for doing FGDs. Just joking, Lisa. But you'll know whether people are telling you truth or full truth or half truths. So I think so. It's a tool that can be worked out and worked. And the thing for the startup is the startup knows we don't know technology. Meaning we are not experts anywhere close to the world in any of the hardware or software technologies. That's not our forte. But our forte is an ability to use it, bring it to life, and create more value-adding products and services out of it. So I think so. This is an example that I thought could be a nice open innovation challenge.
Actually, another thing, Krish, just to build, and maybe again, it's crazy idea, right? Even when you do, for example, FGD, right? So people taste and etc., and they give their comments, but I know that there's technology where you can actually read the expression and give you, right? So things like that, more than what there's colors, there's facial expressions, and those technologies are already available. So how do you utilize all of this to really understand and get more insights from the consumers?
Yeah. So just give you an example, we just worked with the Indonesian bank as part of the Enterprise Singapore Southeast Asian Innovation Challenge this year. They want to use computer vision to observe the facial expressions of the customers, so that's to help them better serve them, because if the customer is stressed, how do they react, and so on and so forth, measure satisfaction, things like that. It's huge. There's lots of the interesting things, lots of possibilities, and if we got the chance, we should sort of, Krish, you might just want to think what are the key areas, right? And one lens to look at is what would you pilot in the next 6 months, and what would you actually implement in the next 12 months, and that could be tied to the availability of the technology, because not everyone has a wearable, for example. So there's something that you could look into.
Yeah. And that's why I deliberately put product out first, because that can, and based on my internal conversations I was having offline, I think people are happy for the product piece to go first, but we use the same platform to explore the other elements. So I think that's the sort of the internal consensus. Yeah. So
okay.
Meaning the maths and the system, the data doesn't care, right? So here the stimulus happens to be the product. It could be something else tomorrow. It doesn't matter.
Yep.
The same architecture and analysis will work.
Okay, right. We've got 5 minutes. I'm just going to quite quickly roll on to the last two. Plant-based. So will we ever have a plant-based adobo? Is that kosher enough for the Filipinos? Whose stream is this?
For stream 3, what I put here is that based from our recent interviews with our consumers, Filipinos still have that mindset of plant-based products are not healthy healthy, but it's not that delicious and it's more expensive now. So what I'm thinking is if we can create a platform to further increase their awareness or offer a solution that is plant-based product, but it's healthy, delicious, and less expensive.
So this is an education issue, also the cultural issue.
Yeah, I think it's a cultural issue.
Okay. Yeah. So back to our lens, right? How do you think a startup can help provide that education solution to overcome that cultural issue, and whether we think that's realistic or not? So that's something to consider.
I think maybe on co-development, we can start with co-development, then creating a platform for increased awareness to consumers.
Yeah. Okay. Apologies, I've been cut short this one. Maybe the next 2 minutes, just very quickly on stream 4, talking about new locations.
Yeah, that's from me. Gladys again.
Yeah.
Actually, URC is already present in most snacking occasions.
Okay.
So right now we're not really into the mealtime occasions like lunch or dinner, and Filipinos are really into eating rice.
Yeah.
And yeah, that market is really huge. Partnering with startups will create or give us time or speed in launching into market, because right now doing innovation within the organization, and there's also a risk in the brand and the organization's name when we somehow make like shortcuts. But in the Philippines, it's actually the small companies or startup companies who launches speedily or easily. So maybe
Okay.
that's
When
how
you say startups, are they tech startups or just smaller brands?
Smaller brands.
Okay.
Smaller companies, yeah.
Okay.
And as I mentioned, we're not present in this category. So in terms of technologies, equipment, and manufacturing facilities,
Okay.
it's better also to do that.
So is this a product innovation? That means, you are introducing an appropriate product rather
Yes.
than a problem that we really need to solve.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Thank you. We just have 1 more minute, so I just want to quickly wrap this up. So we've had various conversations now on different conversations. Thank you everyone for your contributions, either in the questionnaire or here in this conversation. So I think some of the initial ideas, I'll say, are more about what's the new product that we need in order to capture this new market or address this other need. But as I said, in some of those situations, we can also look at if it's a cultural issue, it's an education issue, or it's just like the enjoyment of this particular product can it be enhanced or enabled by a technology or new business model? Is it delivery, or is it a technology layer that helps people sort of understand the product benefits, or get extra content and things like that? I think there's Krish also floated a couple of interesting big ideas, in terms of the using different technologies like wearables and some of these technologies to sort of identify what we can give, and I think what we're going to do for the next 2 weeks, we'll send you a follow-up email on this. It's for your, now that we put all this out, for you to pick maybe 2 ideas, potential problem statements, and just think a little bit more around that, and then so that we can reconvene in about 2 weeks' time and have a follow-up discussion on those 2. Any last questions before we move back to the main room? Apologies, the remaining few minutes was a little bit rushed.
So what's the next step? You'll sort of think through and suggest some ecosystem partners. Is that the idea?
No, I think the next step is actually to identify what are probable challenge statements. And then I think what ESG is, what Enterprise Singapore is trying to do is round up demand drivers like yourselves and say, okay, now we've got enough corporates and we're going to launch an innovation challenge with these challenge statements. So that's the next step. But the more immediate next step is for us, for myself to work with you to identify what might those two challenge statements be.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
All right. So if I could, we'll move everybody back into the main room now, and reminder we could get one representative from the URC group to have a quick wrap up. Okay, all right. Thank you very much for your time.